Hi, this is Dr. Cairns, and welcome to week 4 of Human Resource Issues. It's hard to believe how quickly this course is going, and I'm enjoying it a lot. And I want to say a couple things just to try to encourage you to go even further and deeper with each other. One of the things that I like about forum discussions is the opportunity to learn from each other, and that's an opportunity for me to learn from you as well. So I'm a fellow classmate when things happen there, and I want to give you an idea of how I view the forum discussions and use a metaphor to describe it. And the metaphor is this: a glacier. A few years back, my wife and I were on a inter-passage cruise to Alaska, and along the way there we stopped in Glacier Bay. And while there, the ship backed into the area where this massive amount of river of ice was cascading and flowing into the bay. And I say flowing, that's how it appeared, although the water wasn't flowing because it was frozen. The captain turned off the engines, and all of us stood on deck in silence as we just listened and watched and waited. And we were waiting for a crackling sound to occur. And when it did, we looked for this massive piece of ice to separate from the river. This chunk of ice then to drop into the bay to the sound of what seemed like thunder. And I liken this and use this as an example for forum discussions because each chunk of ice is formed out of the same elements, and the same is true in a forum discussion. Each is formed out of working off of the same material, but how it's applied happens with each one's personal and professional viewpoints and thinking about that particular aspect. So each chunk of ice, as it dropped into the water, was different and varied. And so do your thoughts while you're looking at the same information vary and are different and unique, and you offer a viewpoint. And then each one kind of splashes in the water, various sizes. And so the impact that you have in the learning will vary as well. And so what I want to do is encourage you to not only just spend time focusing on what it is that you have to say, but also focusing on what your colleagues are saying. And I know that's tough because there's a lot going on and you want to get it done and you need to move on to something else. But take a deep breath, read what your colleagues are saying, and respond to them. And then when they respond to you, respond back. And there's one thought that I want to jump on, which Barb mentioned when it came to how did the various faith integration reading this week of Keller relate to the topic of workforce planning. And Barb found a quote that I liked and enjoyed. Work can convince you that you are working hard for your family and friends while you are being seduced through ambition to neglect them. And that's an important aspect to consider when it comes to planning out and looking at the things that we pursue in life. There was an attorney I worked with early on in my career. He was on the fast track in New York to become a partner. And he would commute in from Long Island into Manhattan, and I was working in Manhattan at the time. And he told me a story. He goes, my daughter will go with my wife and drop me off at the track for the train, and I catch it, and as I leave, my daughter will wave and say bye-bye. And that's how his daughter referred to him. She didn't call him Dad. She called him bye-bye. That's how she knew him. He went later on. He did become a partner. He worked 6 days a week. He worked hard to do that. But there was a cost associated with that. So thinking about we're doing that to convince ourselves to work hard for our family and friends, but we're actually being seduced and we neglect them. So think about those important aspects as well. So I'm enjoying your interaction of really how you're thinking about the material and the application that you're having. And this week in the case study, I had an opportunity to practice a little consulting and putting into action the things that you're learning. And that's really where learning takes place is also in the doing. And so this is an opportunity to kind of think through. And I would encourage you for in your jobs and where you are, just try to apply it very practical to your current environment. I look forward also to reading your policy papers this week, and so you can look at week 4 maybe being a chance to catch your breath because you're going to be sharing your policy brief with each other. Again, I encourage you to interact with one another and see what everybody has done and how they've gone about addressing it. And you also are going to move into a timely discussion of looking at what happened a number of years ago, but really much in the public eye today, and obviously looking at presidential candidates and their viewpoint of women. And so we'll look at the Anita Hill testimony in the confirmation hearing of now Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas and get your viewpoints on that and look at what occurred 20 some odd years ago if it were to happen today and think about those aspects as well. And I'm really looking forward to not wanting to get too fast forward, but you're all making great progress in your senior HRM executive paper and the people that you've identified and reached out to interview. And again, this is an opportunity to look at the things you're studying, maybe in an academic setting. How academic is it? How does it fit into the real world? And so, again, this is a learning there. And I also enjoyed Jennifer in how she identified some people that she wanted to interview. And this class is a little bit different than some of my other classes. You've actually had a much better success in identifying people. Some of my other classes have struggled with this. Every group is a little different, but Jennifer's idea was to use LinkedIn to identify people, and that's a great one as well. And I'm on LinkedIn, and I didn't even think about that as a possible research reference source. So very creative in thinking about that, and it can also be used for your networking elements as well. So just some thoughts along those lines. So with that, I want to say I have virtual office hours should you like to talk face-to-face about anything. As we continue to make progress and moving forward, you addressed one of my favorite subjects about succession planning, and while that identified and fits maybe with larger companies, when you think about the smaller companies, how do they do it? And can they apply some of these kinds of thinkings? And I've actually been doing some reading in a book called Great People Decisions, and in that he addresses where companies are family-owned businesses, and one of the aspects that families look to is members of the family to continue on the business. And what happens sometimes is families run out of business or members of the family to take over the business, and or some of the family members are not necessarily the best people. So what do you do in that kind of situation, which really means you have to kind of expand out, and some other thinking has to relate to fitting into that organization's setting and how can they move that forward. I sit on an executive comp board for a nonprofit that is totally family driven, and they've kind of set it up for their son and their daughter to take various aspects of the business that their father and their mother are really the central figures for, and they've positioned it, and those family members have had a great deal of operational experience in that. So there are things to do, but the aspect to consider is a thoughtful process. So with that, thank you for engaging in that. So if you have any questions or concerns about any of this, or you want to just kind of talk about any of it, let me know. I know your nose is to the grindstone, to use an overused cliche, but don't get overwhelmed, and just make sure that you're enjoying the process of learning, because I'm enjoying the aspect of learning from you. So with that, thank you, and have a blessed week.